If you were trapped in a haunted factory that doubled as an orphanage and were being chased around by a homicidal maniac who will stop at nothing to Roblox you, what would you do? Unless you're inhumanly intelligent and impossible to beat in a fight, you're probably not going to survive. So today, we're going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Power Drill Massacre. This girl is going to make some of the worst and best decisions of her life. A couple is driving on a Pennsylvania road somewhere in the Pocono Mountains, and for whatever reason they crash. Megan gets out of the car and immediately asks if Jeff is okay, and he says he can't feel his legs. She immediately decides to get help and retrieves the flashlight from the trunk. She checks on Jeff and he's silent. Okay, there's already a lot to unpack in this introduction alone. This aspect of her player model might be for aesthetic purposes, but Megan has cuts on every part of her body to the point where her shirt has been ripped in multiple places, and a headache, which makes us puzzled as to why she's not violently vomiting at this point due to a bad concussion. If we have a first aid kit somewhere in the car, we'd work tirelessly to get it, and once we do, we'd take alcohol and apply it to some of the major wounds and subsequently employ cotton bandages. We've honestly done extensive Googling, and we really have no idea what could be wrong with Jeff, so we'd give him whatever medical attention he could need for any perceived injury. If it looks like he's just been rocked hard, we'll focus our attention on ourselves. As for the minor wounds, some simple band-aids would suffice. Since all of this points to a concussion, you might think it's counterintuitive to handle our wounds then rest, but the head injury can wait if it means our wounds bleeding or getting infected somewhere down the line. After the cuts are dealt with, we'd find the comfiest place to lie down in the car. It seems like it's later in the evening, but if we sleep until the morning, it's best to have some sort of cover for our eyes. We'd use a cloth or take off a piece of our clothing and wrap it around our head gently if we don't have some sort of sleeping mask. If an onlooker were to come by, they might be dumbfounded and need context to a shirtless woman lying next to a fully clothed man in a car with her shirt wrapped around her head, but it's well worth it if we're well rested and we've stumbled upon our salvation. If Megan's condition is good enough to search for some sort of help, obviously we're in hindsight, but we'd make it a high priority to bring a ham radio that's physically resilient or a phone of similar durability and try to use it to signal for help. Speaking of signal, flares wouldn't be a bad idea either, but what you're probably thinking is that she can run that fast, she's clearly physically capable of seeking out help, and you'd be right. Taking the flashlight and turning it on, Megan runs through a clearing and up an incline until she stumbles upon a boarded up old shed with an inverted pentagram on it and theorized some kids must have drawn it on. And even though it's probably the case some edgy kids made it, Satanists, i.e. edgy atheists that make fun of televangelists all day, most likely aren't the kinds of kids involved with stunts like this. It's more likely that it's kids affiliated with the CFV. Either way, Megan runs up another steep incline, and suddenly a bell sound plays, and to this day we still have no idea why. When you play the game for the first time, it catches you off guard, but it does Megan no harm, so she should just continue on. There's a building in front of her, and she sees a man on the balcony, but the player has the option to inspect all the doors on the first story, but all of them are sealed shut. She decides to go towards him, thinking he could help in some way. When she goes up the stairs, the man has vanished, and there's a door into the building. Okay, a million Among Us crewmates must be popping up in your head right now, because anybody with half a brain is going DEFCON 1 right now, because every atom in their body is telling them to turn the back right now. They're obviously trying to put us into a trap by making us fastidiously chase after one guy who we think might be of help. Megan opens up the door and goes into the building, but this is only one of the major mistakes she'll make. She hears a click and goes up to the door just to find out it's locked. She has no choice but to continue on into the depths. She finds some sort of key with red paint splotched on it next to a sink faucet. Remember that for later. Going to the right, she finds a note on a desk, which seems to be a newspaper clipping describing how authorities were searching for two campers that went missing in the Pocono Mountains. It details how their campsite and belongings were found, but how there was no indication as to where the campers were. Okay, if this doesn't scream to you, we need to get the out of here right now, then you're in the completely wrong frame of mind for a scenario like this, and you're screwed. All we know is that these campers have been kidnapped and brought somewhere, not to mention the fact that if they were mauled to death by some animal, they'd be found by now. The fact that this newspaper clipping just happens to be lying around in some sketchy guy's abandoned but not completely abandoned warehouse should make you bricks. Going through some sort of industrial section of this facility and then heading to an upstairs attic area, she comes across yet another newspaper clipping describing how as of April 4th, 1985, 12 campers have gone missing and there's not a single trace of any of them. We're starting to think this game is less like the Power Drill Massacre and more like Hot Fuzz, where the entire town is in on it, because these are the most incompetent cops, or the most malevolent cops ever. She goes back downstairs and there's a place labeled Sugar Tunnel with an arrow pointing to the entrance. Deciding to go in, at this point her decisions are just going from being horrible mistakes to fridge temperature Celsius IQ moves. Suddenly, a masked figure in a jumpsuit wielding a power drill starts chasing after her, and as the game transitions from one map to a different one, she's able to get away from him. Going deeper and deeper into the labyrinth, she finds yet another newspaper clipping. It talks about a sawmill which was being closed down because of state regulators who want to lease the land to the State Park Commission. Subsequently, she finds another part of the article. This part details how the sawmill cutting costs led to death, but it suspects it could also have been due to foul play. The third part of the article explains how the facility used to be an orphanage. Realizing there's pretty much no point in searching the sugar tunnel because she's been looking for a key everywhere, she decides to head back up. She finds a door to the basement, and now she's starting to make level-headed moves, because in a slasher game, villain's residence, places that aren't labeled places you should go, or the places you should totally go. The driller killer immediately chases after her again, but because Megan can circle around in the basement, she can lose him easier here. It would also be good if we steered clear of those metal doors that always seem to be locked. He doesn't appear just out of anywhere and always seems to come out of them, so I'd walk the whole rest of the game, unless he's coming after us. She gets to a room with what appears to be a stove and other kitchen appliances in it, and finds a key with blue paint splattered on it. Okay, now she's really making progress, because there's a pattern developing here, which is crucial for a game that's given us virtually nothing to help us navigate through the facility. She comes across a note detailing how the parents of a little girl felt after she was kidnapped, and right now it should be go time. Since Megan has already searched through the sugar tunnel and come up with nothing, this would be the optimal spot to pick up the pace on this key search. Eventually, she comes across a third key, and this is a major glimpse of hope. Deciding to go back upstairs, looking for anything else, and then up another flight of stairs, she comes across a door with a lock that has 3 splotches of paint on it. Okay, at this point, we need to employ the keys as needed, then book it the hell out of here and hope for the very best. We don't know what's on the other side of this door, but it's definitely worth it if we're looking for some sort of help, because even if we plan on throwing our hands up and calling it a night, we should explore every crevice of this place first. Using the keys and going through the door, Megan goes down a corridor of some kind, which was probably used as the orphanage, as detailed in that one newspaper clipping. She spots a little girl in the distance, and as she begins to run, Megan chases after her. Okay, let's just assess the situation here. Had it not been for the literal light at the end of the tunnel, this corridor would be absolutely pitch black, and this little girl just standing here, realizing we're here, and then running somewhere makes this so transparently an attempt to lure us somewhere. First, I check each and every one of these doors to see if there are advantageous hiding spots in these rooms. If a few of the doors won't let us in for whatever reason, I'd run and not even think about doing anything else. There's a section of rooms illuminated by red lights, and then the driller killer suddenly comes out of the right door as the girl disappears. Shocking, I know. Who could have seen this coming? Megan runs past him and then continues as time seems to slow and the corridor fades into white. The light then completely envelops the player's vision, and then it fades to a pan of the Pocono Mountains at night, or in the evening, as a radio reporting on the US government's proposed ceasefire between Iraq and Iran plays, as the driller killer's screams from the pain of torturing himself are played over it. Text saying the end appears, and then PDM's logo, as well as a thank you pop up on the screen. But what do you think? How would you beat PDM? Let us know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.